Welcome to Built for This, the podcast where property meets purpose. I'm Talia Hugh.
And I'm Megan Rovers. Together we're here to unpack the real stories behind the people shaping the property industry. From bold first steps to career-defining moments and the life lessons they've built along the way.
If you're passionate about property, curious about the human side of success, or just looking to build something meaningful, you're in the right place.
So let's unpack it. Welcome to Built for This.
This week on Built for This, we're joined by John O'Brien from Henning Property, a buyer's advocate who knows exactly what it takes to win in today's market. We dive into his own property journey, his client success stories, and why Geelong is such a smart place to buy right now.
We also cover the key things every buyer should be looking out for and why having an advocate on your side can make all the difference. Let's unpack it.
Welcome, John O'Brien from Henning Property. Thank you for joining us this morning. Let's start off. Tell us a bit about yourself, background, essentially, how you sort of come to where you are today.
Sure. First and foremost, thank you for having me. And I guess in terms of an introduction, I'm a Geelong boy, so Geelong born and bred, and then moved to Melbourne when I was 18, vowing never to return. It was one of those kids, and now live back in Geelong. Came back in 2018. I've got 3 little girls who are under the age of 7. So we're in the thick of it at the moment, and a very patient wife, and we live in Newtown in Geelong. So back would never move back to the big smoke. I think had a great 15 years in Melbourne, did what I needed to do there, and Geelong's home now, and definitely love where we live.
Beautiful. And could you tell us a little bit about what you do at Henning Property?
Sure. So I'm the director and principal buyer's agent at Henning Property. We're a small bespoke buyer's agent in Geelong. Currently, as it stands, there's 2 of us, and we plan to keep it that way. Jasper Bingham is my associate. Jasper's currently sunning himself in Mykonos.
Half his luck.
Yeah, half his luck. He's on a month-long self-discovery, if you want to call it that. He's 27, he's allowed to. And Jasper's based down in Jan Juc, so he's starting out in his journey as a buyer's agent, but has been instrumental in looking after some of our clients that are down on the Surf Coast. So we run Henning Property both for owner-occupiers and investors in Geelong.
Talk to us about life before being a buyer's agent. What was that? You said you went to uni. What did you do there? And what skills did you get from, I guess, going to uni?
I did lots of drinking at university.
That was a loaded question. That was not fair.
No, I didn't do much. No, I passed. I did everything to pass, as I said to my dad, P equals degree. So I got through. I did an undergraduate at Melbourne Uni, so I did a Bachelor of Arts with a major in German history, strangely enough. But I sort of found myself a bit lost at university. Enjoyed it, loved the camaraderie. I lived on campus. I was at one of the residents, and love what I did, and actually got into real estate at sort of 20, and then got out of it and then got back in again. But I would drive a guy around on a Saturday who lost his license for drink driving. He was a sales agent in St Kilda, and so really started to tap into real estate second year uni, but it was all a bit of a blur, to be honest. Really enjoyed my time in Melbourne, did my degree. It's probably in a box somewhere still, the certificate. But it was great for me to get out of Geelong, to answer your question in short, and meet other people, get out of, at the time, a pretty small bubble, a small country town. Well, at least it was for me, and met some amazing people and opened up a lot of channels for me.
Is property as a career in your family, is that something that there's other people that you've looked up to, or I guess what inspired you to, you said you got in and then got out. I'm interested in that too. Yeah,
so no, not at all. In as far as family connections, my dad is medical. One of my sisters is a criminal barrister. A couple of teachers. One works in marketing and lives in New York. So we're all a bit different in that sense. Definitely no sort of family connection back to real estate. I don't have that story. Like, you hear some of these sales agents say, "Oh, my great grandfather Billy was a sales agent in the 1920s." No, for me, the first in my family, and yes, so early on, and I guess this is where my love of property stemmed from. Was when I was at university, a lot of my friends who were on residence actually lived in Melbourne. So they had family homes in East Hawthorn, Brighton, Kew, Northcote, North Carlton, Fitzroy, and on a weekend we'd sometimes go back, to their place, and I got to see some amazing properties. I was really interested in design and architecture, so it did sort of really, those early years of living in Melbourne were the catalyst for me wanting to go into property. And then I was out every Saturday driving around Middle Park, St Kilda, Albert Park, seeing what property sales was like at the coalface with this sales agent. So then I got out of it and was in hospitality, so owning pubs, and I was just saying before that actually had a foray into music. So I was a country folk singer, spent a fair bit of time in America, did 5 or 6 albums, and that was my dream to break it. And I know it's not a conventional way to get into real estate and property, but I think I learned so much from my experiences as a musician, an entrepreneur. We ran a marketing agency as well for 7 years in Melbourne, on the back of my hospitality experience, that it actually put me in really good stead in terms of running a business, people management, and certainly being able to deal with people, buyers, sellers, vendors, agents in the right way, which I think sometimes you come all through real estate and you have only real estate experience. You don't see the other side, so maybe put me in good stead.
I love that. And with buyers advocacy, were you selling for vendors as well originally? Like, where did the buyers advocacy sort of come from there?
Yeah, so look, we saw a bit of a misrepresentation of buyers in Geelong. I know there have been a couple of buyers agents in Geelong and surrounds, but really proportionate to sales agents and buyers, there was hardly any. So no, we've always represented the buyer. Where sometimes we're working with a vendor, the exception to the rule would be vendor advocacy. And for those that don't know what that is, it's essentially where we might have someone that's uncomfortable going through that whole rigmarole process, getting 3 agents in, interviewing, and typically that can be an old family home, generational home they're selling after 40 years, and they're moving into care, or the kids are looking after it, and we would come in and we'd interview 3 agents, get a sense of their approach to the sale, understand how they're working with our vendor, and then represent the vendor in that sale. That'd be the only exception to the rule, but 95% of the time we're representing the buyer exclusively. That's basically how we work in.
My general consensus, and this is general because I'm not on the tools every day selling, is that buyers advocacy has taken off a lot in the last kind of 18 months. What would you attribute that to? I guess it's not just a trend, it's something that the consumers are demanding. Why are you seeing people want to use a buyer's advocate more?
Yeah, look, absolutely. And I think there's a study done, I'm sure it was done recently, of all property transactions in Australia. I think 2 years ago, there was about 5% that would use a buyer's agent. It's now close to 8 to 10%, and that was done more recently. So you're right, it's a burgeoning industry. I think what has happened in America, 85% of property transactions use a buyer's agent. We're just seeing a flow-on effect, and the UK as well, where buyers are represented. And I guess this whole proposition that, well, vendors are represented, why aren't buyers represented in arguably one of the biggest financial decisions they'll ever make, or outlays? So we're seeing, to your point, buyers going, we really love the idea of being represented at the coalface and during negotiation. And I think I'd attribute a lot of it to
real estate agents. That's what he wants to say.
You can honestly say whatever you want to.
No, there is possibly bad experiences with bad real estate agents, and like anything, like there are fantastic real estate agents that we work with. The guys and the girls at Oslo, absolutely, and there are bad real estate agents, and there's everyone in between. So it's like any industry, you get some good and bad eggs, and also I think there's been a lot more promotion of our industry. Ben Handler's one of them. I don't know if you know Ben, but Ben was the other part of Cohen Handler. Simon obviously been on Lux Listings. Ben runs a program and promotes the idea of being a buyer's agent, which I think is potentially a bit of a slippery slope. I think both for sales agents and buyer's agents, there arguably is a fairly low barrier to entry, and I don't mind saying that on the record, because we talk to sales agents all the time that are saying that there probably needs to be a bit more education on the way in. And I definitely think that's probably true for buyer's agents as well. But I think ultimately people are going, well, it's an industry that we need, and we're seeing lots of buyers enthusiastically engage buyer's agents, whether it's here, Melbourne, Sydney, and even regionally we're seeing it.
And we quite often find, look, as a selling agent, we really want to look after our buyers. Like if they don't have a buyer's advocate, buyers are so important. I think that can be missed a lot. But I think as well, we assume that everyone knows what they're doing because, the amount of time, like buying and selling is one of the biggest transactions you'll ever make potentially. So I think that does get lost in a lot of real estate in terms of looking after your buyers. The amount of times we've actually had buyers say, we will not buy a property from X agent because of the way they treated us. So it all swings and roundabouts. So I think, as a buyer's advocate, I think that's a really good thing to do. How do you find, like when they how do you express, I guess, the benefits of that until you sort of start that process with a buyer to make sure that they know the benefits of hiring you, essentially?
Yeah, so we would have a discovery call with every prospect, and in that discovery call, sometimes we are going into a conversation where the prospective client knows exactly what we do. I had a call yesterday from a lady in Brunei. They live there. They're Australian expats, and she had no idea. She'd never heard of a buyer's agent. An agent in Geelong referred us in yesterday. They're looking for an investment property. They've got one in Brisbane at the moment, and they want to buy in Geelong. She'd never heard of a buyer's agent before, so we had to go through the whole pros of using a buyer's agent. We talked to saving you time, money, the reconnaissance. She actually said, when you buy the property for us, I'm going to jump on a plane from where we are in Brunei. So we're talking up Southeast Asia, near Malaysia, and I'll come down and inspect it. I said, you don't have to do that. This is our process. We'll onboard you. We'll do all the photos, the videos. We'll do a building and pest inspection. We have our own due diligence report in-house. We have a short list of 35 questions that we go through to make sure that your property, ticks off on all of those, from, environmental factors to structural integrity to curbside appeal, everything that we need to factor in, we tick it off. And I said to her, you don't need to jump on a plane and fly halfway across the world to come and inspect the property. So some people have no idea. We have to talk about how we can save them time and ultimately money as well in negotiation.
And with that as well, do you often find buyers quite often come to you after they have been burnt, or do you think that they're, Not to date. We haven't had too many that have sort of come to us and said, look, we've had this horrible experience, that have purchased. Or been missing out on properties and things like that.
Definitely getting that, where we get someone that's been looking for 2 years and they come to us and say, look, we're at our wit's end. We've just had our first baby, and we're tired, we're exhausted, we're working full time, caring for a little one, and we needed to find us a house. And we get that quite often. So definitely disenchanted buyers who come to us as clients.
I'm going to start a very riveting conversation for everyone listening, but I'm just probably thinking about the trend again about buyers advocacy, and I know the Victorian government is especially pushing for more disclosure from real estate agents and all those types of things, and I've been thinking about this a little bit in the last couple of weeks, because they were talking about even having to disclose an auction reserve at the start of a campaign and all those types of things. But I still feel like it's missing some parts, and this is where I see the key of it as a buyer's advocate, because you could buy a house, not off us, of someone else, and it's buyer beware for a lot of things, like aircon, not working, but it's there, buyer beware. Those types of things is what I feel like if we had to disclose, are all the appliances in working order and all those types of things, rather than going over the top with, we seem to be in Victoria very worried about if the buyer's getting ripped off price-wise, but we always say, like, a property's worth what someone's willing to pay for it. But isn't there more to it than just the price? And we feel so fixated. I feel like the government's so fixated on, disclosing all this info about price, but you could be buying a complete dud. You could be getting the perfect price. It might be all in line with comparables, but you could be buying a lemon and no one's there testing the property. Like, we don't say, chuck the oven on before you put your offer in. So I guess it makes sense to people leaning on Buyer's Advocate to be like, these are actually your rights. Yep. And then the government's almost, I don't know, in my opinion, not focusing on the right thing. What do you think?
Absolutely. And we often like an auction because it's a transparent process. We've got one on Saturday and we're looking forward to it because we have a feeling that there's probably not too many bidders, and it gives us an opportunity. It's a really transparent forum in which we, I guess, publicly ascertain and execute what we think is the price of a property. But to your point, some of the concerns we have for particularly first homeowners going in is they don't look at certain things and deep dive into service easements, looking into environmental factors, buying on a busy road. There's a 5G tower behind them, and then yes, there's a lot of conversation around the price guide and real estate agents doing the wrong thing. But I think there needs to be more education around what first homeowners should be looking for. Whether they use a buyer's agent or not remains to be seen. But understanding that you should never buy a house without a building and pest inspector. And is your building pest inspector a registered builder? And this is what they're looking for. And the recommendations they make, if they warrant a second opinion, you should call a plumber or a roof plumber or a sparky. I think that there are too many first homeowners that don't have the education. Financial literacy is another rabbit hole I could go down that's not taught in schools. But I definitely think there's not enough education around the process for first homeowners. And we're talking, yes, to price disclosure that I think I agree is a very small part of it. But so many first home buyers that they're going in blind, and there needs to be more support. Hence why we're seeing a real rise in our industry. Some hand holding, if you will.
Yeah, and I think you touched on first home buyers, but what we commonly see as well, and it's investors probably not understanding the full picture of owning an investment property. Like, what actually makes a good investment property? How do you set up your loan structure correctly? Because I think the classic, and might be speaking out of school / making assumptions here, but it's like we go to our accountant, the accountant says you've got a tax problem, go get an investment property, and it's like, well, have you got this, finance set up correctly? Do you have money put aside in case something breaks? Like, do you have the most, the best appliances? All those types of things. There's no one really, I guess, not advocating, but allowing investors to buy the right property for what their needs are. Because I remember when I was selling, I'd say to an investor, you're looking for a property that's got good capital growth or rental return? And most commonly, it was both. And it's like, well, if everyone could have their cake and eat it too, then...
The unicorn.
Yeah, the unicorn one. But a lot of people would look at me being like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, do you want something that has a really high rental return? Because if you've got a bit of a tax problem, we're only going to make that probably worse. Or do you want the long-term capital growth and those types of things? And as a vendor's agent, acting as a real estate agent, we had to, we still do have to educate buyers on this type of things, because otherwise we just go in circles, because they will get told one thing from one agent and it goes around. So we love buyers advocates, by the way, because we think it, is the other part of our transaction. And what we do at the Geelong Property Hub is very much trying to be like, okay, for a property transaction, you need an agent, you need finance, you need conveyancing. Like, let us help you through that process, because it's overwhelming. And no wonder why a lot of people either make a decision that maybe isn't favourable for them, or they just end up making no decision. You probably see that a lot.
100%. And I think, the whole idea of negative gearing is an outcome, it's not a strategy. And I think so many people get the wrong advice. And to your point, you need a dream team. That's the first thing I'd say to first homeowners is get the dream team around you. And structuring's so important, And I'm speaking a little bit outside of turn here because I'm not a broker, but cross-securitisation is so dangerous if you wanted to build out a big property portfolio, and we see it happen all the time. And obviously, not in our role, but will be privy to it if the mortgage broker or someone talks to us as to a client and their financial situation. But setting up structures from the get-go is so important. And having that dream team, a really good conveyancer, a really good financial advisor, accountant, so important to negotiate what is a very big decision.
And what is your thoughts at the moment? I know you probably hate this question as well, we get it a lot, but on the property market in general, whether it's just local or not. I know we were chatting about it prior, about your thoughts, but yeah, overall thoughts on the property market at the moment.
Yeah, I'll split it up into two different sectors here. So investors, it's getting to a point where it's almost mass hysteria, and I'm happy to say it on the record, between some colleagues in Melbourne that we work for. They refer us all their Geelong work. Sydney and our own clients, we'd have 25, 30 investor briefs, which is a lot. And we have to be very careful we're not overwhelmed. And most of those are sub 750. Yeah. Most of those investors are in Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane. We on our own books have a lot of local investors, but there is a huge focus. I was talking yesterday to the Terry Ryder article recently, which was top 10 national best buys. Geelong's number 3, I think, and everyone is now talking about Geelong. We've gone through a period of stagnation. We're starting to see some growth. So I'm talking about Geelong specifically here, and particularly the inner middle ring suburbs. So investors are flocking to Geelong, particularly Grovedale, Bell Park, Bell Post Hill, Lara as well. And then in locations that we won't buy, in Corio and Nor Lane, sub 600,000. So that's the investor model at the moment. I think Geelong's about to really blow the lid off, and we're seeing that on the ground. Owner-occupiers is also strong, but at certain price points. So, the sub 900, 950, Highton, Belmont, that's crazy. We went to a property. We actually put an offer in for a client in Leonard Street in Belmont. Great agent, great campaign, great property. Had sort of it was a renovated mid-century home, and something you'd find in Northcote or Thornbury. Beautifully done and appointed. There would have been 60 groups on the first open, and not necessarily first homeowners at that bracket, but families stepping up into a bigger family home. And then obviously sub 750 in the owner-occupier market, super competitive as well. A couple of rate cuts help. So that's really interesting. But then the coastal markets, they're a bit volatile, we're finding.
If I was to come to you and ask you, what are the top 3 things that you look... What's your, top 3 things that if you had zero brief from a client that you would go, right, this is what a property needs to make a good investment property?
Without sounding like a broken record here, location. You can't beat... and I say this somewhat flippantly because blue chip locations are key for a property, regardless of the asset itself, whether you're buying a villa-style unit or a townhouse or freestanding. A great location is central to a good property investment. And then we would say good land to asset ratio. The land itself will appreciate. The asset you're buying, as a course of process, will depreciate. So you've got to have a big backyard, and typically we like to work to a 65% land to 35% asset ratio, ideally on 600 square metres. So having a really good land component, and then curbside appeal as well is really important. So location, land size and curbside appeal, because ultimately I think 7 out of 10 property purchases are owner-occupiers. So resaleability 10, 15 years down the line is going to be a family that wants to move into your home. And so you want to maximise curbside appeal. So that might be the street. It might be you're buying a really neat clinker brick in Bell Post Hill with a white picket fence. I think those 3 things are really important to factor in if you're going off nothing.
With your clients as well, and that's really interesting, do you strategize in terms of future purchases and things, or is it more let's go with this one and then catch up? It's
an interesting one because we are on the side of caution with portfolio planning. We try not to go into the role of a financial planner, and there are some buyers agents that will map out a plan. We certainly lean on some of our colleagues. Jordan De Jong runs this amazing platform called Game Plan. So all of our clients who are investor based will have access, and as part of their engagement with us, they onboard to Game Plans. That is a portal or software that helps them map out their investment journey. And a great story we had, we purchased for a client recently from Hawthorn, and they were aspirational, young couple in their 20s, had an apartment in Hawthorn and wanted to buy their first property in Geelong. We put them through Game Plans, and we had one of the professionals from Game Plans sit in the call and work them through the software and the back end. And they had aspirations down the line to buy something in the vicinity of 3 mil as their primary residence in Hawthorn. That was their dream. But they also wanted to retire early. And they were able to quickly ascertain that if they bought that dream home for circa 3, it would push out their retirement age by 18 years based on the Game Plan software. And that was amazing for them to go, wow, this is a sort of an aha moment. So whilst we won't map out strategically, we onboard into Game Plans, and we will start at the end and reverse engineer. So we will say, if you're coming on as a client, as an investor client, what's your end goal? Do you want to retire on passive income of 150 grand? Is it to eventually sell down, 1 or 2, and then the profits go into your retirement income and super? What is the plan? Or is it to diversify into commercial, and then you sell off all of your residential and have nice cash flow for your retirement years? We'll work that out. And if they want to go again quickly, we know what the asset is that we need to buy, and that's ideally something sub 7, where they can come in and manufacture some equity. They can squeeze a bit of juice out of the lemon, so to speak, come in, do a cosmetic refresh, get another val done in, say, 12 months, but also buy in a suburb that's going to experience, organic capital growth. So whilst we don't intrinsically and intimately get into the planning process, we definitely help with it and take it into account, correct.
Yeah. If you don't mind me asking, I'm going to touch on your personal property, journey, because I think I feel like sometimes when you're in property, people think that you must have this super crystal ball or something that that you have that nobody else has, and or when you go to someone's house, they almost start trying to almost panic about it doesn't usually look like this, or we're going to do this to it. Don't worry, it's we're here to see you, not your house. How do you go looking at property as an asset or a thing that you're working with someone for versus then going home to that exact same kind of asset and working through that?
So if we're looking for an owner-occupier, it's really easy. I get a feeling when I walk into, whether it's a home for sale or someone's home that's beautifully done, beautifully presented. There's a great feng shui about it, or I think the Danes call it hygge. And I had this the other day for a very dear family friend we purchased for in Roebuck Street. It was one of the nicest homes I've ever walked into, and I got that feeling straight away. And I get that feeling when I walk into my parents' place, when I walk into my sister's place in Newtown. It's got a lovely feeling. So yes, when I'm visiting family and friends, I inadvertently tap into John O'Brien as the buyer's agent, and I love walking through beautiful homes, but I'm never critical. If I'm looking for an investor at a property, it's a very different lens, and talking property with friends at school, parents is often a point of conversation. Everyone wants to talk about what happened on the weekend, what sold, where's the next hotspot. We're seeing this a lot. And I don't mind talking to that. I always sort of have my property hat on. Even at school, we work with a lot of the families. I've got my hat as a parent and a dad of 3 girls on, and then my buyer's advocacy hat on as well. So to answer your question, hopefully I did. I'm never really out of the zone. I'm always looking, always feeling, but they're 2 very different things. sometimes or always with investment properties. You've got to be so clinical. You're looking at numbers, you're looking at structural integrity. Will I need to restump this home in 5 years' time? It's going to cost my client 15 grand. So yes, sometimes if I walk through a home that's, it's creaky and I see some cracks and it's a friend's home, like, oh mate, maybe you need to get a
restumper's number.
Yeah, have a look subfloor.
Happy birthday, here's your birthday card with the restumper's number in it.
Yeah, pretty much. There's some stuff going on subfloor. So always wearing that hat, but I love beautiful homes. And if I'm being honest, I love the investor stuff we do, but where my heart sings is buying for owner-occupiers. And especially first homeowners, we've got some great stories, and that's always one of my favourites.
Would love to hear one of those stories if you're open to chatting about a first home buyer that you've bought for.
Yeah, so a couple spring to mind. We had one this morning. We went unconditional yesterday without giving my clients away, but just was so satisfying for a really lovely lady from Melbourne who'd been priced out of the Melbourne market. And we're talking about units and townhouses here. And we found her something off market that was so suitable and appropriate for what she was after. And calling her, my wife was in the car, I reckon we called her 2 weeks ago, almost to the day, to tell her that our offer had been verbally accepted. It was such a nice feeling for someone that had never purchased a home before, quite late in life. To make that phone call was magnificent. To hear that human reaction, that was a great one. And then we had a first homeowner, one of my favourites, who we were called in by her broker to assist. So we went to an auction with her. We hadn't engaged yet. She was bidding at the auction. She missed out. And I could see she was really devastated afterwards. And then they had a really small window in which she had to purchase for personal financial reasons. So we had to purchase in like 3 weeks. And we found something off market. I got on the phone on a Saturday and started to ring around, and we found something in a great sort of inner ring suburb of Melbourne, great house, and that was really satisfying calling her. We don't have too many clients that cry. I think she did, and that's nice. And they're my favourite sort of stories. Investors are fun, but I love owner-occupiers and first-home buyers.
I can definitely, agree with that. It's beautiful. Actually, we called a buyer yesterday morning and she cried on the phone, and it's the best. So, can definitely relate.
We've touched on in the pod recently about, and your role would be very similar. Like we've just spoken about the win, and I guess but you might not get a heap of those all the time. So, no doubt, just like us on the vendor side, you'd have ups and downs, disappointments, roller coasters. How, in a small team, and especially because I know as Tales relies on kind of the office vibe as well to kind of, how do you, I guess, work through some of that, the highs and lows of real estate?
Yeah, so my business mentor taught me a concept called RSF, which was really, I guess, endorsed in college basketball, and it stands for Relentless Solutions Focus. So you miss a shot, I guess in the speed of basketball, you miss a shot to win the game, you've got a bit of time to dwell before the next game and training, but you were basically only allowed to feel sorry for yourself for half an hour post-game, and then you've got to work on solutions for next time. And we have that same philosophy in our business, which is, and I say to clients, we missed out on one recently, and it was really, really frustrating. It wasn't us, it was a vendor. And deal fell over, and I said to my client, they were away in Fiji, I said, look, we're all about RSF now, and I explained the concept. We've just got to be disappointed tonight, go away and grieve a little bit. It was the home they really wanted, but we're back to the phones and the drawing board on Monday morning. So to answer your question succinctly, we're all about being disappointed in the moment and then finding something bigger and better. You move on. What went wrong here? What was the catalyst for the deal falling over, or what was the issue with our offer? Sometimes you can't help that, but then it's about getting back into it and really hitting the pavement on Monday morning.
That probably is, I guess, maybe I don't even know what the word is, maybe testament, but something that we've been going on about a little bit lately is that we're finding on the vendor side that people are just choosing agents based on what they're selling, essentially, the cheapest fees and all those types of things. And I have never seen a property transaction go 100% smoothly from start to finish. And what you've just said then is having the right person in your corner when something goes wrong is so important. But still, time after time, we're seeing buyers unrepresented or vendors choosing people not based on who they felt was the best person for the job, the most recommended. They're still going on the cheapest fee. You can tell that grinds my gears. How do you, I guess, guide vendors when you do the vendor advocacy, and do you find that in the market as well when you're dealing with agents?
So in the vendor advocacy space, we talk really candidly to what you just mentioned around a good sort of personality fit. So important. It's so integral in a big decision to sell your home that you get along with the agent, you have good rapport. Even though there's a vendor advocate in the middle, that's super important. So I would say that that's so important. And yes, there's always going to be someone at 1% on the sales side. And there's always a vendor that's quite happy to take them up on that. And sometimes is usually the same agent that said, oh, your house is worth X, and it's
feels.
Yeah, and it's well and truly not worth X. It's probably 50 grand south of X, but that's another conversation. And I think for some vendors, they are compelled to work with agents because of perhaps financial stress or duress. They think, oh, great, I've always thought my property was worth this, and finally someone's, in agreement, and they're 1%. We see it a little bit in the advocacy space where there's a lot of us now, and there are some buyers agents that don't charge very much, based on industry standard, and we've seen that in Geelong where we've had to sort of talk to a few prospects around BAs from interstate that are buying in Geelong and charging a small pittance, and we sort of talk to well, it's about experience, due diligence, and getting that amazing client experience. So I don't think that'll ever change. Unfortunately, it's rife in our industry, unless on the sales side of things we had a really clear stipulation: you cannot charge below 1.5% ex-GST of sale price. I don't know whether that'll ever happen. I'd love to see that on our side, but that won't happen. And typically, for everyone listening, a buyer's agent's usually in Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, major metros, 2% of purchase price ex-GST. We can't do that in Geelong. We certainly don't think that's the right way to do it in Geelong. A lot of people are really gun shy at a percentage of purchase price. We've had some feedback. Well, if you're 2% of purchase price, how does that motivate you to get the best price for your client? So we potentially need something in our industry on our side as a bit of a guideline as well for fee structure.
It's challenging because when I used to sit in front of a client, I used to feel like it was a job interview always, like that they were interviewing me, and I would say, I understand where you're coming from because you don't know what you're getting until I've done my job. So I'm sitting here coming from an industry that's probably not the most trusted industry saying, trust me, I am the right choice for you. I will get you more money. I've got no way of actually proving that except for there's no way you can go with them and then come back to me and we get different results. But I think it just goes to client testimonials. Yes, you see them all the time, but we give clients numbers out willy-nilly. I still don't understand why vendors don't go shop agents. Like if I was looking to pick an agent to sell my home, I'd go to 5 homes similar to my home and see what the agent is like on the doorstep, because I think when I have done that and been obsessed with property, like if I'm in a different suburb, like if I'm in Brisbane or something, I'll go have a look at some houses, see what the agents are like, get some ideas. And it is sometimes chalk and cheese. Like sometimes you get absolutely donuts from someone, or sometimes they're relentless. They sign you up to great mailing lists, they call you, and I would just make a decision based on that most of the time, because that's who's going to be standing at your doorstep representing your house. If they're essentially, I've had an agent sitting on the couch inside, that's not what I would be wanting from my agent. No, that's for sure.
That's terrible. That's it's a whole new level, isn't it?
Yeah, so I won't go into my my grievances with the industry too much more, but you touched on before Geelong specifically, and obviously we're based in Geelong, potentially got listeners all over Australia. Why do you think Geelong is a hotspot at the moment? What do you think Geelong's got going for it that a lot of other regional towns, Ballarat, Shepparton, don't have? What do you reckon is our magic here?
Yeah, no, the special sauce. I think if we look at Geelong's proximity to Melbourne, I know Ballarat and Bendigo are close enough, but the ease of heading into Melbourne, and especially on the back of the hybrid work model, I think is a huge thing for Geelong, where like if you live in the outer ring suburbs of Melbourne and you're working the CBD in Collins Street, you jump in your car and you drive out to the boonies.
Berwick.
Yep.
Where I'm from.
Yeah, which is the crow flies is what, probably 50 minutes with traffic?
Probably similar to,
Very similar. Or you come down to Geelong and you can catch a train, you can catch a ferry, or you can drive. I have my grievances on the road to Melbourne at the moment. That's another story. But I think it's that flexibility to have 2 days a week in Geelong. And then when you're in Geelong, that's where the magic happens. Like you're 20 minutes from Torquay and a swim on a Saturday morning in summer. You've got Eastern Beach, which I know for some Geelong locals that have been there forever, it's like, oh, it's changed and I wouldn't swim there if you paid me. But it actually is a beautiful part of Geelong on the bay. Or you can come down here, Barwon Heads, or you're not far from Port Arlington, wineries. There's just so much at your doorstep. So I think it is, if you want to immerse yourself in Melbourne, which we can do. I'm going to the footy tomorrow night. I'm staying up. Or I took my daughter for her birthday to go see Annie the musical, and we had dumplings in Chinatown. You can do that and be home in bed in Geelong at 6 o'clock. It's just, it's so convenient, and compared to living in the outer ring suburbs of Melbourne, the tyranny of distance isn't an issue. It's an hour. So I think that's potentially why it's so attractive. And it is a big city. Our population's in excess of 200,000. It's only going to grow 64% in 15 years. Like we are flying, and we will be, we are the number one destination for regional migration in Australia. We've just superseded Sunshine Coast.
A very successful business person once said to me that he said he got told that always buy near water because it's not going anywhere. So I feel like what you've just said, you've gone Torquay, you've gone Barwon Heads, you've gone Eastern Beach. We've got water surrounding us, and people are always attracted to it, whether it's because it's nice to look at or it's nice to swim at, and it's not going anywhere. And I think a few investment seminars that I've spoken at is about like seeing Shepparton, where I'm from. It was, the fruit bowl city, and then that industry, I guess it hasn't died. I won't say that, but it's, not the booming industry it was, and that was essentially the heartbeat of the town, and property prices stayed stagnant for 10, 15 years because there just wasn't that attraction, because the jobs weren't there, the money weren't going through, and those types of things. So, yeah, I have always remembered him telling me that and thinking, if you think about where people ran to in COVID, it was let's go by the sea. Let's go by the seaside, by the water. Yeah. And I just think it's, so true.
Absolutely. And also you made a really good point. There's not a reliance on Ford and Alcoa and that traditional manufacturing that we had here in Geelong anymore. We're looking at so many different diversified industries, which I think really helps. Whereas, in Shep, I don't profess to know Shep that well, but, the fruit industry takes a hammering, then people aren't motivated to move there. There's not the job opportunities. There's so many job opportunities in Geelong at the moment. KPMG's got a regional head office here. The Spirit of Tasmania is here. There's a huge, I think it's a $1 billion defence contract that we have with a South Korean company at the moment as well. There's so much happening in so many different industries. We've really evolved from being reliant on Ford and that traditional manufacturing. So I think that's really important as well.
Well, thank you so much for everything you've gone over today. I feel
Pleasure.
like we've covered a lot of different topics, and you've dived into, I feel like maybe industry or a part of the industry that people may not have been hyper aware of. So thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you, guys.
We might finish off with some rapid fire questions.
Yes, shoot.
They're usually off the cuff and just completely made up. So I'll throw it to Tals.
Yes.
What do you got?
Well, I've got one because of your past.
Yes.
What is your go-to karaoke song?
Go-to karaoke song. Probably Wagon Wheel. It's probably one we used to play in pubs back in the day as a cover that went well. So if I could remember the words, that'd be my go-to.
Love that.
Favourite holiday destination?
Love Port Fairy locally. Love Japan overseas.
Beautiful. Have you got any holidays coming up?
Is that a rapid fire
No,
question?
it's not, but I'd love to know.
Interest?
We want to get to Fiji before the end of the year. Whether that happens or not, I'm not sure. If we don't go to Fiji, it'll be Apollo Bay or down to Tassie again in the Spirit.
Beautiful.
Love that. And if you're at an Italian restaurant, is it pizza or pasta you go for?
Definitely definitely pasta. Yeah, Freudian slip, pasta.
Well, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
It's been awesome.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate
Thanks
it.
so much.
Thank you. Cheers, guys.